Welcome in once again. It is the Fantasy Football Forum. For those that missed us last week, well, I apologize for scheduling issues, but we are back on track this week. This is going to be a solo show this week. Grant had scheduling conflicts, but he will be back when we resume our talks. And when we're back with Grant, we'll talk about the the NFC East, since we had just last talked about the AFC East. So we're going to take a little dip down south, though, and with this rescheduling, we're going to talk AFC South. And this is, again, we're going through offseason. If you've not seen any of our videos yet, go check them out over on YouTube or on Spotify. We're on both. Go send a like and subscribe. Give us a comment on one of our videos. We've gone through so far the AFC and NFC North in what has happened the offseason. We've also gone through the AFC East, and today we're going to actually cover both the AFC South and the NFC South here, all in one video as we get ready for the upcoming fantasy football drafts that, well, you might be doing it now or mainly in August if you're a casual player and not one of those high-stake guru players playing one of those tournament formats. But again, go like and subscribe if you have found us on YouTube. Share us out with your friends if you want, or if you want to keep this information to yourself, go ahead and do that as well. Understand that. So, talking AFC South, and when we look at the AFC South, last year what we saw was Jacksonville made the leap forward that we thought was going to be a year away. Bringing in head coach Doug Peterson, having Trevor Lawrence as their quarterback that they are building around, Jacksonville was able to make that leap forward, thus also dethroning Tennessee. Now, let's be careful when we talk about Tennessee. They have a lot that we could talk about. As I look at the South, there are things that each of these teams represents that it could go one of, obviously many, but we could go very positive or also very negative with each of these teams. That's kind of the theme that I see with the South is there's a lot that if I just look at it at face value, here's what it is. Meaning, like, let's look at the realistic type of standings that we can see at the end of the year. Jacksonville continues their plod forward with taking control of the South still. They still have control of the South, that they would still finish on top. Tennessee still is, with the personnel moves that they've done, and recently we all know they signed DeAndre Hopkins. We'll get to them in deep, a lot deeper format later when we talk about the team. But Tennessee could still vie for the league or the division in the South. Houston could take a step forward, right? Houston could take a step forward with draft picks, and Indy could struggle. They have a new head coach. It's a new quarterback, a rookie quarterback, or a new quarterback, depending on what you want. That all could happen because Indianapolis disappointed most of us last year. The corpse of Matt Ryan, and it's a joke and it's not probably very funny, but he was not what we thought he was going to be. He's not the Peyton Manning switching, teams late in his career and, taking a team to a new level that they needed. But they went a different route this year. So are they going to see the same struggles, or are we going to see something else? On the flip side, if we're seeing something else than what we see on, just the paper, that paper level surface, that surface level, if we're seeing something else, we have to look deeper, right? What if Indianapolis actually was really close? They fired Frank Reich middle of season last year, brought in Jeff Saturday, and he surprised a lot of us. But then they hire the defensive coordinator or the offensive coordinator from Philadelphia. And if I was wrong on that, it was the defense coordinator, but I think that he went to Arizona. So apologize if I actually mixed that one up. But they hired a new head coach. They brought in some rookies. What if this is actually a lot better team than what we realize, right? They have a third place schedule this year, which is a lot more favorable when it comes to division schedules, rather than having to go face the Bills when they play the AFC East, or the Chiefs when they play the AFC West. They get to face teams like New England or Jacksonville, or not Jacksonville. Las Vegas, the Raiders. They get to face Jacksonville twice, but this is also a division that could still be very much up for grabs. Yes, Jacksonville made the leap forward that we thought was going to come this year. They did it last year. Fantastic for them. And they have good personnel. They have the things, they have the team to do that. They have the head coach. They have the structure in place. But what if they weren't quite ready yet? What if it's going to take another couple years for them to actually get there? We don't know. Kansas City is seen Buffalo and Cincinnati. They're seen as the top tier because they've done it year in, year out. So we need to see it from Jacksonville before we place them in that level. They definitely could. I'm not saying they won't, but they could still need a year. It's a bold call here, but bold call. What if Indianapolis wins this division, right? What if Jacksonville takes second? What if Houston still is third, but they're a lot better team with their picks? What if Tennessee's last? When it comes to a team like Tennessee, to me, it can go one of two ways. And we'll get to a deep dive on them, but as a whole, 1,000-foot view from Tennessee, if I look at it, to me, it starts and stops with the head coach. When it starts and stops with the head coach, as far as what is the core of the team, that's a problem. It's not the personnel. It's not the players. It's focused around the coach. That's an issue when it comes to what's the longevity of this team. This team, Tennessee, they're giving you all the signals that they're still going for it. They went and signed DeAndre Hopkins. They've made moves in the offseason that says we're still going for this. We're not done. They're still Derrick Henry. They're drafting young quarterbacks to try and get better at the position. They're taking risks there. They're saying, we're not done. We're going to be just as good, and we're going to vie for the division. What if it's not enough? What if it's beyond, they've reached that point in their players' careers where the production just isn't there? What if, right? So that's not a very popular take to say that Tennessee could, while they're telling you they want to vie for the division, that they're still going for it, they also could be missing, and we could be seeing them. Yes, it wasn't too far long ago, 2 years, where they were the number one seed overall in the AFC. I understand that. What if that was their window? What if it's now too late? Question to ponder. I'm not saying it's a bull call, right? Bull call potential. Again, when you look at the AFC South, the way I see it is teams could go one of potentially two ways. Yes, there's more than just two scenarios that could play out, but teams could go one of potentially two ways. Could be very, very good for them, depending on how things play out. Could also be very bad. So let's break down each team in the AFC South real quick, right? And remember, we've been going last to first because we want to talk about the exciting teams more often than not. This is the case. I think the last place team is actually from last year was Houston Texans. They were one of the worst teams in the division in all of football. Obviously, they were picking at the beginning of the draft. So, yeah, I think they have a very exciting potential this year, right? The biggest name that they lost fantasy-wise is Brandon Cooks. I mean, they also lost wide receiver Chris Moore. They lost Philip Dorsett, Jordan Akins, O.J. Howard, Royce Freeman, Kyle Allen, Jeff Driscoll. The only one really we care about was Brandon Cooks. And even then, if you rostered him last year, it's kind of a disappointment, but that team was more of a disappointment player-wise than anything else. They brought to the team, they brought Case Keenum, obviously to back up C.J. Stroud, which we'll get to. That was their first pick in the draft. Devin Singletary, potentially either going to play a 1B or be the backup or a different type of role to the running back that they had, Dameon Pierce, last year. Mike Boone, a fullback, Andrew Beck, but I mean, we don't play fullbacks. So, wide receiver Robert Woods, which is probably the most exciting free agent wide receiver, but he's also aged where it's not as exciting when you think about the talent that they still have. Noah Brown, Steven Sims. The most exciting pass catcher was the tight end Dalton Schultz coming in from Dallas, and then another tight end, Eric Tomlinson, but probably more for depth. The biggest two probably fantasy draft picks that we would look at are, of course, quarterback CJ Stroud. What's he going to do this year? But then in round 3, they drafted wide receiver Tank Dell from Houston, actually. So hometown boy there. But again, this was a team that they're taking big swings this offseason, right? They were one of the worst teams, so they're taking some big swings. Trading up, what can they get from the rookies? What's going to happen? I think this team could surprise a lot of people. If you're looking from a betting perspective, this is not going to be one of the worst teams like it was last year. I think they're trying to get the quarterback, for the franchise. They're trying to start competing in the division where they are a couple years behind what the Jags are doing. But they're taking big swings. It could pay off really well. It also could not. What if CJ Stroud's not the quarterback that they drafted? It's happened before. We've seen quarterbacks go through the college career, be very productive, and really not do well in the NFL, and also be high draft picks. But it's enough, I think, to get excited about Houston, right? So the biggest question, the really thing I'm looking at is, what is Stroud doing in the offseason? Who's his favorite target, right? Who's the guy that's coming up? Because we've seen wide receivers. Nico Collins has been a name in years past. Where is he the guy that's coming out as the wide receiver 1 overall for the team? Is it John Mechie, the guy that had battled cancer last year? We've seen players battle cancer the same way. James Conner is the best example. Come back and have very productive careers. Is John Mechie that guy? Is it Tank Dell? Will it be a rookie this year that is leading the team? They went and got him, and he is a fantastic route runner. He is a tactician when it comes to how he runs his routes, what he does on the field. Who's it going to be? So that's the biggest question I'm going with Houston. Obviously, it is not prudent from a fantasy football perspective to load up. We don't want to load up on Houston Texans players, right? We don't want to load up on that, right? But I really question, that's the thing I want to know. What is the state of their wide receiver room? Who is coming out and saying, I'm that guy? Who has that connection? That's the biggest thing I want to take to when it comes to, what I'm paying attention to this offseason for Houston. Now, guys that I'm avoiding for Houston, there could be a lot that I am. I'm just going to name one, but a popular name. It's Dalton Schultz. He was last year, he had a kind of a slow finish to his season. Or, he may not have. I may be misremembering that. But he's not the tight end we want. It's not the late tight end I'm going to pick. And honestly, he's not a late tight end. He's only at tight end 11. And again, this is in 12-team PPR draft formats, single quarterback. So if you play in another type of system, it may vary a little bit, but that's the data that we are using. He goes at the end of round 9. So it's not going to cost you a lot, but if I'm waiting that long and I've laid out other tight ends that I would like more, if I'm waiting that long, I'm going to go ahead and just keep waiting. I think there's other players when you're waiting on tight end. The thing you want to do, remember, is are they the first or second pass catcher in the team? If they are, great. If not, that's a problem. I don't think Schultz is going to be either the first or the second pass catcher in on that team. So I think he does not fit that late tight end mold, at least not in my book. Now, the guy that I'm ahead on ADP is John Mechie. And he's going to be a popular name, but I think Nico Collins has had some headlines come out as well. And this is pretty far down. Like, this is a guy that he is at the end of your drafts, where if you're drafting him, he's probably your last pick. So I'm taking a shot on the athleticism. They drafted him last year despite him having cancer, and that may or may not have been known at the time of the draft. But even then, he was still a producer in college. You can see guys get back from that type of cancer and have very good careers. We've seen it before. I think this is a new quarterback. This is not the same old show. So we're starting over. Where I'm not in on Nico Collins is I've seen Nico Collins. This is his third year. He has yet to do something. And is that a construct of what the team is? Well, if it is, okay. But this is the year we're going to find out. If I'm taking a gambling bet, I'm going to say I'm saying it's John Mechie that's going to produce as a wide receiver 1 for this team. I'm making that call. That's where I would say I'm going to place my bet on it. John Mechie is going to be the guy that leads this. He's probably the guy I'll take at the end of my drafts. He's going around 19, so you can probably get him off the waiver wires if you didn't want to draft him. So that's the guy I'm going to say that has a big bounce back this year. Most rookie wide, it could be Tank Dell, but I'm sticking with John Mechie. That's where I look at this team and I see there's biggest potential for him. And it's the guy that's not being talked about quite as much. So, on to the Indianapolis Colts. Biggest offseason losses fantasy football-wise that we will think of is they lost wide receiver Paris Campbell. He went over. Obviously, we already talked about we haven't talked about the NFC yet. So, he will come up later when we talk about the NFC East. Quarterback Matt Ryan, who retired, and they let go of quarterback Nick Foles, or backup quarterback Nick Foles. Biggest acquisition trade-wise or signing-wise was quarterback Gardner Minshew. He comes over from Philadelphia following his head coach, or his offensive coordinator, now head coach. And they got wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie from Buffalo. Obviously, the biggest fantasy news from the draft for the Colts was they drafted quarterback Anthony Richardson. And then also in the third round, they drafted Josh Downs. So, what does this mean? Well, Indy missed out on a lot of expectations last year. They were a potential favorite, or not necessarily a favorite, but a potential to vie for the South last year. They did not, right? So, they, like the Texans, are taking big swings. I think a guy like Anthony Richardson is a guy to do that. And we can sit and squabble about the metrics for Richardson, but I think he has the potential. Now, again, with the overview thought of this could go one of two ways. Yes, I know there's more than that, but one of two ways. Richardson has the ability to be that Cam Newton-like player. You know, you can look at his college tape and say, well, he struggles with his down throwing accuracy. He struggles with his pocket awareness. He struggles with this or that. I think he has the metrics that says he has the absolute potential to be that Cam Newton type player and can do it starting year one, starting early in the season. This guy could be that guy that I am taking, especially in two quarterback leagues. I would be taking the shot on Richardson as that could be the guy that's maybe getting slapped on a little bit. If there's a lot of positive news coming out of Colts camp about this guy, not a lot of negative news, that's something to pay attention to in my book. Obviously, there's more positive news than negative, but negative news has a lot more impact than positive. But I am of the opinion that that's the shot to take. Richardson's the guy, the rookie quarterback that says, I'm going to take a shot this year, not miss out on it. So if you drafted him in your dynasty leagues or if you're getting ready to draft, that's the guy. He's going late enough that, you know what, it's a chance. But I would take a chance with a guy like that versus paying up for your Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jacksons, all of that, because Anthony Richardson goes after guys like Geno Smith, after Russell Wilson. He's going in the 11th round, typically in single quarterback leagues. So he's the guy pay attention to. I'm not really avoiding many Colts at ADP. If there's one big question mark that I have, it's going to be for Jonathan Taylor. It's not because I don't like the skills of Jonathan Taylor. I was in on Taylor his rookie year. He broke out late his rookie year, but I was in on him as a talent. My biggest question is not even the RPO system that the Colts could produce, because if you look, there are studies that have been done by other fantasy football analysts that say RPOs actually doesn't hurt the running back position. Where I hesitate with Taylor is because he goes early enough in drafts. It's with the rookie quarterbacks. Rookie quarterbacks are what, most of the time, they're what decreases the opportunities for running backs. Yes, also for the offense as a whole. But again, if Richardson is that guy that we think he's going to be, or that he could be as the potential to be that quarterback, that doesn't scare me as much. Now, I'd rather take a chance on the wide receiver or tight end position, not the running back, with the rookie quarterback and the RPO system. That's my only hesitation. I'm not saying don't draft Jonathan Taylor. What I'm saying is make sure you get him at a value. Don't overpay for him. So don't take him before other guys. Don't take him for the Nick Chubbs or the Austin Ecklers, that type, where he is going before Chubb typically in drafts. It's not far, but he's going before them. And I think he can go down a couple notches in drafts. So just be aware of that. Player I'm higher on, honestly, it's the tight end position. I'm kind of at level. I like the pass catchers. I think if there's one that's going to shine, it's going to be Michael Pittman, simply because he is that alpha receiver in that system. He is the X. He's the guy. He's the first read typically. I'm interested to see what Josh Downs does. What does Alec Pierce do? Are they getting Isaiah McKenzie involved? But it's typically that X receiver that I am in. I'm not fading Michael Pittman. I'm also not going to pay a higher price. Last year, Michael Pittman's price jumped. Don't buy the jump. Buy the dips. And this year, it's dipping again. So depending on your team format, your league format, he could be your wide receiver 2 or 3 if you start 3. Could be your flex play, but I think he's the guy that could outproduce in the wide receiver room. Jelani Woods, the tight end. I love late tight ends. That's kind of the key. If you're not getting your Travis Kelce's, I'm waiting on tight ends. I'm going to take my chance in the bargain bin at tight ends. Currently, he's tight end 30. So, again, you could take him off waiver wires. Let's say if you have a high-profile tight end that gets injured. Well, where are we looking at? This could be a guy. So, it's, again, swing for the fence. But he has a big frame. I think he's like 7 feet tall or close to that. He's bigger than most offensive linemen. He could be that red zone target. Again, this is what ifs. He could be that. He may not have a bunch of catches. He may not get a bunch of yards. But if he's that big body in the red zone that they really want, that actually could pay off. He's also that. It's also entering a second season. People like to talk about the tight end that Pittsburgh took, that is big, Darnell Washington. And, oh, look, Jelani Woods was there a year ago. We could do it now instead of going and taking the rookie, where rookie tight ends have a hard time producing. Anyway, again, the biggest overall view is, could it be one way? Could it be another? What side do you take on these teams? Next up, let's talk about Tennessee Titans. And again, I spoke on them earlier as far as, to me, this team starts and stops with the head coach first. It's all about what is the head coach doing. Don't get me wrong, Mike Vrabel is a fantastic coach. He is probably one of the top tier coaches in the AFC, if not potentially the NFL. He is a great defensive coach. And there was struggle with, yes, they let the GM go. There was conflict between him and the GM last year, so he's gone. This team still, though, remains basically the same as it was. They lost Robert Woods. They lost Austin Hooper. They lost Jeff Swain, Dontrell Hilliard, Chris Conley, Trenton Cannon, and Josh Dobbs. All those guys except for like one we at least knew of, because Tennessee was not good as far as their production, but they were winning games, and they were in close games. So that's something to remember. They still play good football. But what happens if it doesn't, if the key playmakers, Derrick Henry, they brought in DeAndre Hopkins, they brought in Chris Moore from the Texans. What happens if it's age now that's caught up to him? That the playmakers, I understand they have young playmakers places, but what if they're not ready and they haven't transitioned enough? I'm just saying that's a potential, right? Not saying that's going to happen. I think we have to be ready for that to be a potential in Tennessee. Now, obviously, the big, splash fantasy-wise players that they drafted was in the second round. They took Will Levis. I think it's a big swing, and no, he's probably not the next Josh Allen. He might be close. The biggest issue with Levis coming into the draft was he was cocky. He's a smart guy, though, and this is honestly the position with that coach, with Vrabel, that can mold him into a good quarterback. So he has the potential again. And then they also drafted Tyjae Spears in round 3. So the biggest knock on Tyjae Spears is, does he have any ACLs left in his knee? He's had several replacements of ACLs in his knees. That's not good going into the a rookie as an NFL. But could he get a year production if, for some reason, Derrick Henry either gets traded midseason, isn't doing that well, or gets hurt? Because Derrick Henry is entering his 7th season, right? So after missing the playoffs, they are starting to look for answers. What are those answers moving forward? I said it earlier. I'm going to say it again. What the team's moves are telling you, they brought in DeAndre Hopkins. They kept Derrick Henry. They're keeping core guys. They're trying to win now still. They were there 2 years ago when they had the number 1 overall seed and lost to the Bengals in the playoffs. They remember what it was like to be the top dog in the AFC. That's not that far removed. Again, what if that window's passed? So, could this be a transition year for Tennessee? If it is it going to hurt them really bad? Are they going to have a high draft pick? Are they going to miss the playoffs? Or are their players going to step up and they actually have real potential moving forward to challenge Jacksonville going forward? We don't know. I said it before, the biggest questions that I'm looking at is going to be Derrick Henry. I don't think we're going to hear a lot of negative news out of camps for Henry. He is entering his 7th season, though. If you go look, running backs entering their 7th season in the NFL, typically their production starts to go down. So, is this the end of the big production that we've noticed from Derrick Henry? I understand he is part of that exception to the rule just because it's Derrick Henry. He is a beast among men. I get that. Father Time is undefeated, though. Father Time is undefeated. Derrick Henry also has had a lot of carries in the NFL. Not saying don't draft him, but I'm going to raise the question of, since he is entering his 7th season, is this the start of the decline? And I think we have to be ready for that. I think this could be a transition year running back-wise for fantasy, where the guys that we've seen be those top-tier guys start to fall and are replaced by the next guys coming up. I think that's a real potential that we have to be aware of. I'm not avoiding Titans at their ADPs. I'm just questioning it, right? Now, I want to talk about the guy that I'm higher on than ADP, and he kind of got knocked a little bit, but I am still higher on ADP for Treylon Burks. Now, hear me out. I know they signed DeAndre Hopkins, but I think the DeAndre Hopkins signing hurts Chig Okonkwo more than it does Burks. Who was the second pass catcher before the signing of DeAndre Hopkins? Nick Westbrook-Ikine? Kyle Phillips? Did any of you know that before I said that? If so, great for you. Good for you. You pay attention to depth charts. I don't think Burks was ready. And honestly, his play style isn't that of the alpha role, whereas Hopkins still can step in and do that. I think Hopkins still has a good chance to potentially have a wide receiver 2 season. But this doesn't nuke Burks. I think nuke coming in more nukes Chig Okonkwo. I was higher on Chig Okonkwo as a potential because, again, before the signing of Hopkins, he fit the mold for a late-round tight end. Second pass catcher on his team. Very efficient with his targets. He still can be very efficient, but it hurts his potential of how many targets he gets. So because of that, I'm lower on Okonkwo than where he might go than I am Burks. Burks is probably going to slide a little bit more because of the news. Now, Burks is right now sitting at wide receiver 37. He is drafted in the 8th round. I will take my shot on a year 2 breakout with Treylon Burks over than some of the other wide receivers that are going in that range. I would take Treylon Burks over Marquise Brown. The offenses aren't that good, but I think the upside with Burks is there more than it is with Brown. That's just one of the guys that within a round of Burks that I could take. So it's not a stretch. So, again, we don't know. It could be really good. It could be they're still vying for that division. It also could be very bad. And if it is very bad, and we're taking our time and looking at what players do I want from this team, even on the bad, I'd still look at some of the pass catchers. Not necessarily Henry, but good or bad, I could see potential for pass catchers still giving you value where you're drafting them. Lastly, for the AFC South, then we'll transition to the NFC, but it is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And like I said, they surprised some, not all. Actually, it was in my bold predictions last year that the Jaguars would win the South. Or might have been that they win the South or that the Titans don't win or don't make it to the playoffs. And that is more also than I'm higher on. I think I was higher on Indianapolis, if I'm honest. But anyway, I'll go back and listen to the tape. For losses, free agent-wise, as far as fantasy football goes, they lost Marvin Jones, Dan Arnold, or Chris Manhertz for both tight end positions. They added wide receiver Jacoby Harris, also running back Dearness Johnson. Not very busy. They kind of kept the same core of guys there. But they did draft, second round, they drafted tight end Brenton Strange. So potentially Evan Ingram's replacement. They also drafted in round 3 Tank Bigsby. So we have a running back conversation with Tank Bigsby plus Travis Etienne. Those are kind of the biggest fantasy-wise that we're looking at. So after making that leap forward, after winning the South, they're looking to build. Again, that's what they should do. They have a good head coach, a great head coach. They have the quarterback they're building around, and they have the pieces that they're doing it. Obviously, Calvin Ridley's also available after serving his suspension. What is he going to do? Right? What's that running back room look like? Is it Travis Etienne? Is it Tank Bigsby taking his job? Is it a mixture? We don't know. I think if I'm looking at the running back room, where I want to see is what's the negative news coming out of the running back rooms. I think recently I heard positive of Tank Bigsby and what the coaches were saying about it. But when I look at what the coach said in his quote, he didn't say anything as far as relevancy. So positive news is not much, right? Unless we start hearing that, well, Bigsby's running with the ones and only him, or he's majority running with the runs, and Travis Etienne is coming in as a breather back in drills, or whatever that is. I want to see what the negative news is. That's going to carry a lot more weight in the running back room as far as who's going to lead it. I think Etienne has the potential to build off what he did last year. I think he was underutilized, but I think it's also 1 year off the Liz Frank injury, and it's a new system that everybody was learning. So what's he do now, right? That's what I'm looking at in the running back room. Now, the player I'm actually out on ADP-wise, right? It's going to be, well, 2. I'm out on tight end Evan Ingram because there is a potential that adding Calvin Ridley opens more stuff up for Evan Ingram. He's currently tight end 9. He's going in around the 8th round. But again, he's not the late round model of tight end that I'd like to go for. So because he doesn't fit that, I'm not going to go after him. The other guy I'm really not sure about and I'm not out on is I'm not buying Calvin Ridley at his ADP. Currently, he's wide receiver 22. He's going off the board around round 5, pick 7, round 5 average, right? The reason I'm not buying into Calvin Ridley is I want to see it. We saw one season of 1,000-yard, big production in a Matt Ryan-led offense with a hobbled Julio Jones where Ridley shined. We saw it once. We've also seen seasons where the mental game, he needed a break from it for the mentals. Is Calvin Ridley more like a guy like Josh Gordon, where he's had off-the-season issues and he's trying to deal with that? And gambling was his way to try to deal with some of it, and he got caught and served it. He's back now. Is he that same player? I'm not going to take my wide receiver pick. I'd rather go get a guy that's going a little bit ahead of him and DJ Moore versus Ridley. However, I am on Christian Kirk still. He showed a 1,000-yard season last year in a new offense as that lead wide receiver. He's going around later, at the end of the 6th round. I'll take a chance on a guy repeating in the same offense with the same coach and the same quarterback that he's built repetition with. I'll take that chance that he's still that guy versus a guy coming off suspension for off-the-field issues that has had issues before, and we've only seen it once. Just throwing that out there. I'll be the bearer of bad news if I need to be. But I hope that I'm wrong, but maybe I'm not. So let's switch over to the NFC South. And honestly, this could be very fast because the NFC South, as I look at it, it's not very exciting. This is a lot of teams either in very much transition or they're going for it now. They've got the offensive pieces, the young guys that they're going for it, or they made offseason acquisitions that we're still in this, or they're trying to figure out what do we have. So it's not really an exciting division, to be honest. This is not the division I'm stacking a lot of guys on my fantasy football teams because the offenses could be pretty bad. But there is also potential. So, realistically, the teams that, if we look at the end of the season standing, it should potentially be somewhat like this, where it's New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina, and then Tampa Bay. Maybe. I think bull call standing is actually going to be Atlanta takes the division. That's a pretty bold call, too. Maybe Carolina takes the second place. New Orleans isn't what we thought they were. Derek Carr kind of struggles. They may be at third. Tampa Bay still may get last. But there's also a difference going from Tom Brady now to Baker Mayfield. There's a difference. So let's look at this division here, right? There's potential. There's a lot of risk, though, too. And a lot of unknowns. But let's talk Atlanta. Last year, they were one of the most run-heavy teams, right? They ran the ball a lot. It looked like it was going to be a potential good, and then it started fluttering out as the season went on. Their losses, they only lost wide receiver Lamade Zaccheaus. They brought in wide receiver Mac Hollins from the Raiders. And also Taylor Heineke from the Commanders. So right now it's Desmond Ridder and trying to hold off Taylor Heineke as the quarterbacks. Will the quarterback play be better than what they had with Mariota? There's very good potential. The biggest draft pick for fantasy-wise that we look is Bijan Robinson. Now, yes, he is one of the best running backs that we've seen come out since Saquon Barkley. I understand this. But we also have to be realistic with the Falcons. This is not a Super Bowl run team. This is not a team vying for that. They may try to vie for the division, but this is not a team that's poised to make a Super Bowl run. They drafted Bijan Robinson 8th overall, but is that the best move? I would say football-wise, schematically-wise, that's not the best way to build a football team. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. That's fun. That may sell some tickets, but that doesn't win games. Having a differential playmaker in the running back position does not produce wins. Go ask the Giants. Why are they not paying Saquon? Because it doesn't produce wins. Kansas City doesn't have a league-winning running back. That's not the way to build a team. Philadelphia doesn't have a league-winning running back. It's not the way to win games. So, while this could be a very fun team, there's also a big potential risk. The biggest question I have is Bijan going to be that top-tier guy? And right now, that's the guy I'm avoiding in drafts as far as Falcons players at ADP. Right now is RB3. A rookie that's not taking a snap is RB3. Really? You're going to tell me you're going to take Bijan Robinson at the end of the first round, and yet a guy like Nick Chubb, who lost Kareem Hunt, who has no backup, and the team is saying, we're going to go with it. This is it. That guy's going to go after Bijan. I understand. There have been rookie running backs that have had top 12, top 5 seasons for fantasy football. I get that. You can come yell at me for all that statistics. But those are more the exception to the rule. Honestly, that's just an insane price. You're telling me that Bijan Robinson at his ceiling is going to give you that upside. I don't think there's enough pass volume work for him to get that, because I think Tyler Allgeier's not being drafted highly enough. He had a 1,000-yard season last year. So he could cut into some of that work. And I get Bijan is a more explosive running back and a better prospect than what Allgeier was. But he still had it. I don't think he's going to get the pass work that those that are drafting that high think he will get. He's being drafted at his ceiling. And if he doesn't give you that, that's a bad first-round pick. So, that's the guy I'm avoiding. You don't draft a rookie at his ceiling like that, especially in the first round. I will draft Tyler Allgeier just because he's going in the double-digit rounds. I think he still has value. But plus, when you're drafting him, he's your RB4, 5. That's a good potential of value, especially if a rookie running back gets hurt in his rookie season, which that's not unheard of. I'm not out on Pitts. I think this is actually the year to buy Pitts because this is his third year. There are a lot more tight ends that break out in their third year than their first or second. So because he was a good prospect and a good athlete when he got into the league, that's still an option now that he's lower in a lot of people's consensus to go potentially buy that dip. Drake London also could have a second-year breakout. It could be London and Pitts as the main pass catchers in that offense. And if that's it, those are two guys to still draft at value. But I'm out on Robinson this year. I understand he is a fantastic football player. Let's be honest, yes. I'm not saying he's not, but I'm not drafting a rookie that high. Not doing it. On to the Saints. Saints, they lost Andy Dalton. And that was it. They re-signed Michael Thomas. They brought in tight end Foster Moreau. Obviously, the biggest one was bringing in Derek Carr. Jamal Williams they brought from the Lions. And they brought Jarvis Landry. Big draft for fantasy is Kendre Miller, although he was put on the PUP list. So we'll have to see on him. But then also it was announced that Alvin Kamara is pleading to a lesser charge, a misdemeanor charge. Now, we don't know what that suspension could be. Typically, I think the precedent that has been set, but we don't know if this is going to be it, is 4 games. So Alvin Kamara, depending on how his ADP fluctuates, if you're in the 8th round, he's still there, 4 games suspension, that's not bad. Because he'll still have a role there. So, the biggest question is going to start with Derek Carr, though. What is Carr able to do? Is he able to support Olave, Thomas, Kamara when he comes back? What is he going to be able to do? Now, there's not really a player that I'm avoiding at ADP. I'm cautioning on Michael Thomas. He's probably over that age hump where his production is going down. I'd rather draft a guy like Chris Olave around so later than Garrett Wilson because I think the potential is there, and Olave is a lot more likely to have a better season than Garrett Wilson is, just because the offense could be a little bit more fast-paced, could be a little bit better. I don't know, but there's potential. I was in on Kendre Miller, but I think that's still cautionary to say, let's see if he's able to get off the PUP list. If Kamara is only serving a 4-game suspension, Miller could have to wait. I don't think it's Jamal Williams, but Miller's the guy to say what could happen. So I'd still bet on the rookie talent because I think Kendre Miller is a great prospect, but let's see what happens. Again, potential, but it's big risk. And the coaching staff is still questionable there in New Orleans. On to Carolina. They brought in another new head coach again, Frank Reich. So we'll see what he does in Carolina. Could be a good fit, but we'll see. On the field, though, they lost running back Deonta Foreman, but they brought in DJ Chark, Adam Thielen, Miles Sanders, Hayden Hurst, and then they signed Andy Dalton. Obviously, the big boost for this team was, and they did lose DJ Moore, but we already covered that with the Bears. So, yes, they did lose DJ Moore, too. But they drafted Bryce Young. No surprise that's who they wanted. And then also Jonathan Mingo was their round 2 pick. So, what this team is telling you is they're going for the young quarterback, and they want to win. They want to make that push. They're bringing in the weapons. Now, I don't think the ones that they brought in, I think Adam Thielen, we've seen the best from him with his days in Minnesota. I don't think he's really going to do that much. I think if there's a wide receiver that's going to be leading it, it's going to be Terrace Marshall, or it's going to be the rookie, Jonathan Mingo. Probably more Marshall than Mingo, but we'll see. In the running back room, it looks like it's Miles Sanders, but don't sleep on Chuba Hubbard. That guy is still hanging around. I think it's the running back I would take a shot in later in drafts. So there's no really. The biggest thing is to pay attention to is going to be, is it Bryce Young leading the way, which so far it is? Who's his favorite target? Who's leading the running back room? I think Chuba Hubbard has a chance to be more of a threat to Miles Sanders than what we realize. Miles Sanders is not a bell cow worthy running back. We don't have that. He struggled in Philadelphia. So what's to say Chuba Hubbard doesn't come in and take some of that work, and that's going to be a shared backfield then. I'm higher on Terrace Marshall than I am on any other player, just because I think he's the guy to lead it. He's going undrafted most of the time. So, again, same as with most AFC or NFC South teams, you don't want to load up on players. You don't want to build your fantasy teams around these players. That's not the way to win and have success. But it's also a way to differentiate your team, where if I get the surprise guy that, or the quote-unquote surprise guy that is leading the wide receiver room in Terrace Marshall, and he is producing like a wide receiver 2, and I got him at the end of my draft, or I got him off the waiver wire, that's how you differentiate your team. That's how you build a league-winning team. You take those certain pieces that could happen. So, that's what I have to say about Carolina. And lastly, we have Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay is going from Tom Brady, one of, if not the greatest quarterbacks that's ever played the position, to Brock Purdy. They also lost Julio Jones, but he was not really a thing as far as what he did. He wasn't able to stay too healthy these last couple of years with the Bucs. Also, other than Baker Mayfield, they brought in running back Chase Edmonds. The only real fantasy football guy, but it's a real sleeper, is in the 6th round they drafted Trey Palmer. I don't know if it's this year. That's more of a dynasty stash than anything else at that position. So we're going to look at, is Baker Mayfield the guy we saw in Cleveland? See, the guy we saw in the last half of the Rams last year that he did surprisingly okay? Who is Baker Mayfield now? So the player that I'm avoiding this for Tampa Bay, it's actually Mike Evans. And it kind of hurts me to say that, because let me first say Mike Evans is a fantastic wide receiver. He had 8 seasons at 1,000 yards a season. But he's also at that age where I think it's age, and then the team, the production's gonna slow. Now, I could be very wrong on that, and so the potential is still there for him to get there. He could be that play style that Baker loves of, I'm going to go out, going to catch the ball in a contested area, and if it's not a touchdown, it's, Mike Evans is not the yards after the catch guy, right? But he gets open. So, stylistically, it could happen. Now, where I am more in on than others in consensus, and this could be a team build strategy too. If you're doing a 0 RB build, this guy could be that player that you want to help build around, but that's running back Rachaad White. Now, if you look at the film, White could just seem like just a normal every type of running back, but he was vying for Leonard Fournette's job last year. Leonard Fournette was having a good year last year, and White came in and started taking work away incrementally as a rookie. Fournette's now gone. Tampa Bay did not draft a running back of consequence that would vie for the position. They didn't draft anybody high. They still have Keyshawn Vaughn, which I think reports came out that he's looking like the clear number 2, but he's not a threat. Which then Chase Edmonds, he's really not a threat to Rachaad White. I think White has potential to get that pass catching work, plus be a between the tackles runner. He could be that guy like Josh Jacobs was last year, where he's drafted in the 6th round and he has a top 10 finish. I don't see there being a running back that it's not the argument of who else is there, because there are other there are other players there that could do that. I think there's a potential there with the talent that White has to go and get him in that round. And there's good value there that he could, even if he's an RB2, you're drafting him in the 6th round. That's great value. That's how you differentiate your team. That's how you win leagues, is you find those values. Look at who else is there to see where's that clear path of starting. It's already there with White. He was vying for that starting role with Fournette last year already. He was making it so it was a struggle for Fournette to just stay on the field. And they didn't bring him back. White's a guy I'm higher on. I think he's very undervalued this year, simply because Tampa Bay is undervalued. And I think we're taking the situation a little too far. We have a tendency to do that from year to year, saying the situation's awful, the situation's bad. I don't think it's as bad as we think. Yeah, it's not the Tom Brady-led offense. It's not the Super Bowl team we saw, but it's not that bad. But that will do it for the South, both AFC and NFC South. And I appreciate all of you for watching and following along. Again, remember, like and subscribe to see when we upload, because we try to upload weekly, but sometimes it doesn't happen. But I appreciate those that have watched and still continue to do. Leave a comment, a review, and I will see you the next time when we talk. Hopefully, it's next time when we're talking NFC East. Until then, may your fantasy football teams have the best of luck, unless they're going against my team. We'll see you.